Hi everyone! Today I will introduce our paper Pa Cima y Pa Abajo, Building Bridges Between HCI Research in Latin America and in the Global North. This is the work of a group of Latin American researchers in an effort to understand the similarities and differences between HCI research practices in and outside Latin America. In this paper, we contribute to the understanding of how HCI takes place in the region through the perspective of a sample of researchers and practitioners from and or working within Latin America. Specifically, we look at what are the factors that influence them, the challenges they face, as well as what resources and methods they employ when doing HCI-related work. The expansion of knowledge production within the HCI field appears to advance along with an interest in increasing representation, particularly of members and research areas connected to historically marginalized communities. In Latin America, despite numerous local and regional efforts, international exposure remains a challenge. For example, events in Latin America have lower citation rates than those in the global north, and only between 0.5% and 1.2% of top HCI conference attendees are from Latin America.
Now, HCI is a diverse global community, yet there still exists a divide between the mainstream practice traditionally located in the global north and other geographies. Even though various communities have studied how HCI is practiced in their regions, challenges involving the lack of resources and support, as well as difficulty establishing inter-region research collaborations, remain. In Latin America, additional challenges include lower international research collaboration and a misalignment between HCI publication venues and local research evaluation policies. In response, the Latin American community has created local conferences, workshops, summer schools, and local publications in Spanish and Portuguese. We used a mixed methods approach implemented via survey targeted at HCI practitioners from Latin America working in Latin America or abroad, and non-Latin American practitioners working in Latin America or with Latin American populations. The survey, available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, asked about research fields and application areas, publication venues, years of experience, research methods, target populations, among others. The survey was filled by 110 participants. We used data only from those who completed the survey in its entirety, a total of 66 participants. 50 of them signed up for a follow-up interview, and we selected 19 of them from that sample, maximizing diversity across countries of origin, gender, age, education, and sector of practice.
We found 7 types of challenges that respondents have faced when doing research: interpersonal, adapting research methods to Latin America; resource scarcity, the multidisciplinary context of HCI, discriminatory technology, language, and publishing fees. When assessing location groups, for instance, Latin American in Latin America and Latin American out of Latin America, and then we contrasted those with these challenges, we found that participants who are in the region perceive technology to be more discriminatory and face more challenges adapting methods and working in a multidisciplinary environment. More analyses are included in the paper, and we encourage you to check them out after the talk. Now, these quantitative analyses are accompanied by qualitative thematic analysis. This analysis led to 3 main themes we formulate here as questions. What is HCI's practice orientation in Latin America? What are the driving forces and tensions across this practice? And what are some of the expectations of HCI practitioners in the region? Here, I will introduce you to some of the highlights from each. First, what is HCI's practice orientation in Latin America? Participants' experience witnessing the social inequities that pervade the region drove the large majority of them to use HCI-related methods and concepts as means to support social transformation in the region. This entails often prioritizing the analysis and or development of technologies that are, as participants put it, well thought and appropriately designed to address Latin Americans' unique problems. For HCI practitioners, the pursuit of this research perspective, we learned, entails careful consideration of 3 aspects of their practice: acting with enough care and responsibility towards the communities that participants work with so as to avoid perpetuating harm doing. Also, respecting the knowledge that communities and users bring to the table, ensuring that those who should be part of the research are actually part of it. And a constant call for reconsidering what counts as valid HCI research practice, with challenging assumptions of what is or should be generalizable.
Some of the driving forces and tensions of HCI in Latin America that both enable and limit social transformation HCI practice include local to global diasporas, the relation within the industry sector, and the role played by higher education institutions. Interviewers remark that HCI in Latin America tend to pursue their specialization studies abroad from various reasons, including an absence of HCI graduate programs in the region and the value that international credentials have locally. We found that this transnational flow seems to be leading to a reappreciation of knowledge produced in Latin America, as well as a preference towards social-oriented work. The intersection of HCI and industry work was also highlighted as a point of tension in our data. Several participants believe that industry in the region misuses its economic power. Instead of using it to foster social change, it includes exclusively capitalistic goals. As a result, several participants perceive industry's goals as values as a limiting factor to achieve social change. They report actively opposing industry productivity-centered goals by working on research projects that focus historically on marginalized populations and prioritize local problems and reciprocity to communities. Data suggests that academic institutions in Latin America provide a unique space for motivating HCI-related work towards social transformation in the region. However, local government structures regarding research and funding within higher education may limit researchers' possibilities for conducting community-based projects. According to our participants, Latin American universities struggle to recognize these limitations and, in their quest for visibility and social impact, tend to put even more pressure on researchers who seek to achieve change. HCI practitioners in the region also remark on the expectations of them being a translator across multiple stakeholders, a connector that self-promotes by building networks of peers and collaborators, and an engineer that masters technological skills. For some of our interviews, the end goal is not only self-promotion, it is also about, and I quote, building more representation for their countries, and ensuring that, quote again, Latin Americans have a voice as leaders in the area and become an inspiration for others in the region.
In speaking about our takeaways from this study, we consider how this nascent, social justice-oriented HCI research and practice perspective provides insights into how to expand and better understand these factors across HCI communities worldwide. First, we highlight how the building of a Latin American HCI community takes place by building bridges. One of the strongest forms of this in our analysis are diasporic relationships. HCI practitioners from and working within Latin America finding each other to forge solidarity. Distinct aspects of HCI in Latin America in our findings, for example, participant recruitment and incentives, the role of the local languages and approaches to consent, give form to these transnational relationships and make them pivotal on how the field shapes in the region. But in replicating initiatives and infrastructures from the global north, Latin American practitioners are prone to mimicking faulty structures within both industry and academia. Second, these unique aspects of the Latin American HCI community seem to be configuring a social justice-oriented practice. Our findings revealed a trend among practitioners towards social justice-based practice. This trend expands to practitioners abroad too, explaining the strength of the diaspora and is consolidated through a sense of responsibility, respect for partnering communities, and subversion towards established norms in mainstream HCI. At the same time, socially oriented projects require practitioners to operate at multiple technical, communication, and management levels, while they interact with a myriad of stakeholders locally and abroad. And academic institutions, for example, do not seem to have the necessary expertise and infrastructure to help practitioners develop these skills in the face of an ever-changing HCI practice. Although preoccupations with work connected to society are of course not unique to Latin America, our interviews accounts seem to suggest that it is a central theme in how HCI is configured in the region. Given the rich knowledge production and activism through the region with regards to feminist and the colonial studies of technology, this is not surprising. Needless to say that one paper is not enough to encompass everything, and we need to keep doing research to better understand HCI communities broadly. We look forward to discussing more with you during the breaks at CAI or online. We also thank everyone who participated in the survey, and we thank you for your attention.